really blurry. I don't understand why it's blurry. Alright.
How's your day?
Hello.
Okay, so for my group, we are discussing what mandatory mediums and stuff like that in the war on drugs and questions like that. So I guess I'm going to start out with, what is your opinion on mandatory minimums?
With the mandatory minimum, I think it's, well, I actually think it's like, almost like discriminating, because it's like, majority of the times when they search like an African American male or a white person, it's like, depending on the amount of like, say, cocaine you have, or crack you have, or marijuana, depends on the amount you have. You may have it will determine how long of a sentence that you will have. Like, for example, my cousin he got like 5 ounces on him. Plus he had a lot of other stuff too, like with cocaine and all that. He ended up getting like 35 years in pen. I'm like, wow. I'm like, but you can kill somebody and get out in 5 years. so it's like, I think how the system have it set up is that if you're selling drugs, or if you have that amount, instead of getting punished, like taking half of your life away, they should try to do like a drug court or something like that to help with the mandate or help with this mandatory sentence. Because I think what is happening is getting a lot of these young kids who's out here selling drugs, is getting them called up. They getting like a felony and all that stuff at an early age, and it's going to affect them down the road, because they may have an ounce or two on it. And I'm like, but you're going to give them 30 to 40 years, and if they have to do that whole time, they could be like 50 or 60 by the time they get out, and then that whole life is gone. So I think they need to come up with a way to try to minimize the time. If you go in, if you have 3 or 4 ounces, hey, you have to go to drug court. If you complete the drug court, do what you're supposed to do, not piss and dirt or anything, then you'll be on probation to X amount of time. I think that would help a lot of the population.
Also, like, kids are going in more in foster care systems because parents are getting caught with a nickel-sized amount of crack, and that's, leaving them in foster care, being raised by a grandparent.
Right, I agree, because a lot of my friends now that I know are getting raised by like their grandparents, because their mom and dad are in jail because they selling drugs. They selling drugs because they had a felony. They don't have no choice. You can't expect somebody with a family of 5 or 6 to work at McDonald's or Wendy's for $7.25 and not be able to survive. So a lot of the times when these kids or parents or grandparents, for them not out doing this stuff, is because they have to do something to compensate the money they're not getting. And by putting them in jail for that long period of time, you're hurting them, but at the same time you're hurting kids that are leaving behind for somebody else to raise. Then more likely those same kids are going to end up following their parents or grandparents' footsteps, because that's the only thing they know. So I think if you would be able to like rehab them or rehabilitate them, I think that's what I'm trying to say, it will probably help cut down on some of the trafficking in and out of prisons, and some of these young kids that's out here on the streets may be able now to focus now getting into school and getting a decent education instead of being on the street.
Good. How has the drug war impacted you, either personally or within your community?
Well, it affected me personally and communally. Personally, it affected me because I used to be strung out, so I understand that part. But thank knock on wood, I never did get busted with anything. I never went to jail or pen for drugs. It affected my family a lot because I have an older brother who was in and out of jail selling drugs. So it was like, me and my mom actually was hearing him on tape when the man he was selling it to was wired, so we heard the whole conversation. So it's like he's lying to us. Oh, Mom, I didn't do this. Mom, I did this. I didn't do this. But then while we're in there, the police played the tape, and We hear you say, hey, I got this. I'm like, so you did do that.
Right.
And it affected all of my family, not only my immediate family, but it's also affected my other family, like I was saying earlier about my cousins and stuff. So I had, his brother got killed because there was other people in the house with him and they thought he had his drug money, or and they also thought he had his income tax check. So they came back that night, broke in, but because they thought he was gone. He was in the bed asleep, so when he came out of the bedroom, they killed him.
Wow.
And so it's like, it's hurt a lot. It's hurt a lot. And then it's affecting the community, because if you try to go to your neighbor's house, or you're trying to go to your grandparents' house, or wherever, you have to you have to drive through all of that. And as soon as you drive down, they run up to your car, hey, you need this. So it's like, we have to come up with some type of way to be able to get it off the streets, to be able to help all communities. It shouldn't be like the East End have all this protection, because most of the drugs is coming from the East End, going to the West End, or vice versa. So I think we have to come up with a middle ground to be able to help both sides. You can't discriminate for one color of another when everybody's doing the same thing, so everybody should be able to get the same penalty. But the thing is, a lot of times we don't have the money to buy a good lawyer, so that's another thing that's hurt the community, because then you have these young kids who have babies. Now they got a teenage daughter, a teenage girl, now she got this baby, but the baby's dad is in jail, then now you got somebody else raising this child. Right. Then you wonder why all these people on food stamps or whatever, because their breadwinner is trying to support them, but at the same time, when they get caught, they locked up, then here you are now, like my brother, 5 kids. So here my mom is trying to make sure that his kids is taken care of while he's in jail. Then I'm like, I got time. But that's what happened.
That's true.
That's what happened. I was like, well, but now some of his kids have a good relationship with him and some of them don't, because he was never there.
Right.
And I think that's what's happening with the community, how it will hurt the community, because a lot of times your son or daughter is going to be rebellious against you, because when they needed you, you was locked up.
Right.
Now you get out of jail, you want to come back and be a father. It's too late for that, because they now have that mindset, okay, I'm going to be in the streets. The streets going to raise me, and a lot of time, the streets are these kids' parents.
Right.
So I think that's something that society has to work on as
Do you
well.
think the society targets one population more?
The government, yes. But it's crazy, because I remember as a kid that my parents has always said that. Even
because
my uncles.
the video we had to watch of that police officer talking, and he talked about how they, track people down just because they're walking on the street funny, and look who they targeted. They didn't target white people.
Right, and
targeted
it's like in my hometown, there was the sheriff. He was always busted black folks. He always did, but he gave the drugs to his son. And his son turned around and sold them back to us. I'm like, but we knew that. And eventually, the state police came in and started realizing what the sheriff was doing. So they ended up firing the sheriff. He ended up going to jail and ended up busting his son. But he would actually bust people, and he would take their money and drugs. And then his son, he would give it to his son instead of turning it in. Like the video was talking about, like 80% of the stuff they confiscate.
Right.
They keep.
Right.
So that was the same thing that was going in my hometown.
Isn't that crazy? That's real life.
That's real life.
That's
And
crazy.
it's when I was seeing, I'm like, well, I remember that one, because we were like, his son is 2 years younger than I am, so we was all in high school together. So we all knew that his dad was the sheriff. We always knew what was going on. Because he would come and tell me, he said, yeah, my daddy bust so-and-so last night. And he gave me this and gave me this. So I'm like, okay. So,
and you're going to give me this and give me this.
And so, but that's how he made his living, but his dad was crooked. And that's a lot of times when these kids get busted is because, my thing is, how you gonna put somebody in jail because they had like a joint?
Right.
Why are you putting them in jail? Why Why are you wasting all that money giving them 3 or 4 months in jail or whatever for a joint?
Right.
I'm not
I
saying
agree.
everybody smokes joints.
No, but
I'm sure
still.
somebody in your family or somebody might have, but for a joint, they should not have that much time.
Exactly, I agree. I guess a little bit more on a social policy question. How do you think social policy could be changed? Like, what do you think that we could do to improve it or change it or?
I think to be able to change the policy on the war on drugs, you have to change the government. Because majority of the time, when all these drugs coming into the inner city or the ghettos, is because the government has brought it in. And then we're arresting these young people for something that we actually gave them.
Right.
Because there's no way that all these drugs to keep coming over from Cuba, Mexico, and all of that without somebody in the government letting it come through. Because it has to go through customs some type of way. That's my opinion about it. And I just think that until the government can come together and realize, as we talked about in class, that this is just another slavery that Shelton was talking about, then it's never going to change. We have the government as a whole have to look at it. I think what's going to happen is take somebody in higher government like congressmen in the Senate or the House, one of their kids or somebody get caught
Right.
with a certain amount of drugs. They're more likely to probably get off and be hush hush. But if it gets public, I think that would help starting the process of this social problem. Because then a lot of people will be like, oh, okay.
Right.
Say for